Morning, everybody. Here we are picking up from where I last left off, and that was when I had gone back to the North End. I was very fortunate in that I got after leaving K9, um, I got the assignment that I wanted, and that was back to the North End yet again. And so I would have been in like year 14 or 15 or let me see, and math is not terribly good. No, 17 years. That's what you get for going to grade 12 twice and getting grade 11 math. Um, but I once again got to be surrounded by good people. And that was something that became or was becoming ever more important. Um, Almost, actually more important than what it is I was doing, the work-wise. And being surrounded by good people to me is not just having great supervisors that treat you like gold or let you do whatever you want, but it's more so being surrounded by uh, a great bunch of peers. Rarely do you ever have a perfect shift or a group of people where everybody's fucking easy to get along with, great workers, um, and hardworking, and a good bunch of guys and gals. But for the most part, even though I didn't know the majority of the people on this shift, uh, but I knew a handful of them, had worked with some of them before. I was just lucky to land on my feet in that regard. Um, and and I had great bosses. Although one of them was pretty challenging. Um, Sometimes you you get someone who probably shouldn't be managing people in a stressful environment. Some are better at it than others. Some of them, you know, uh, the way that they naturally are, it isn't good for them. And for this one supervisor in particular, who had high fucking blood pressure, and could be extremely calm at one moment and then way overreact at another. Like, that's not bad for you for your ticker. And this person, I mean, he's a good dude. Wasn't evil or anything. He treated me fairly well. I could talk to them, but there was someone who just a general patrol shift in a busy district might not be wasn't the best place for that person. They needed a more relaxed environment because they were just naturally, I'm not a doctor, but bipolar, uh, and high strung. And so the other supervisors and good ones, good street 60s, S2s, patrol sergeants, um, when they realize that the shift sergeant is like that, they'll manage them. And that means, in being the go-between between the guys and the big boss, they'll manage the happiness and the morale of the shift. And the S2s that I had at that time, that my shift had at that time, um, did a good job. Uh, did a good job of managing that while taking care of us. Um, though both were experienced enough, both as supervisors and as cops, not to overcompensate by, treating us like babies, but to tip the scales to a healthier working environment um, when that particular shift sergeant overreacted, which they had a habit of doing. I don't think it was ever anything deliberate or malicious. You just kind of never knew what you were going to get with them. um, and overreactions, are just fairly common. Um, but there were occasions where when I was acting, so senior constable acting up in the patrol sergeant rank, where the shift supervisor had these overreactions. The good thing was that I could I could take my boss aside and calm them down and reason with them. And that's bosses with big egos won't listen to a subordinate. But bosses who can push their ego aside to listen to someone who's senior and experienced. And of course, I also had an interest in keeping the shift happy because, part of your job when you're acting as a supervisor is to do the same thing that the S2s do when they're both there. You have to make sure that the guys are looked after, and you gotta make sure to sometimes explain things to your boss who, might fly off the handle and blow some steam unnecessarily at the guys. So I was able to do that, and that's good. I had one supervisor that I'd had before that I really looked up to, and for that she was someone who, whenever they were coming to a call, I never wanted to cancel her. Quick, decisive, stick to your guns, kind of tough broad. And I know that's politically incorrect, but sometimes just that's how you can describe a character, and to me, it's not a negative thing. She was fucking sharp, and for a few years, I kept in pretty close contact with her and would bounce things off her, and I trusted her advice because she was a go-to person that had earned my respect. And then one of the other bosses I had was someone that I'd worked for and on the same shift with before, and I really liked him. It would change later on when that person moved on, and I got the opportunity to work with just one of the best Street 60s I've ever had. An intelligent, smart, experienced street cop, a good investigator, and somebody who genuinely gave a shit about the health and well-being of the guys, and somebody who was empathetic. You don't always have to be a go-for-the-throat type of person. There's a time and place for that kind of supervising, but sometimes, you need to recognize when someone doesn't need that approach in terms of handling a problem, be it work or personal. And one of the other things too is one of the partners that I had, I think sort of my longest or consistent partner on that shift, was someone that, I was friends with, didn't really socialize with them on a regular basis, but someone that I had quarried with in K9, and someone that I got along very well with. And this was one of those situations where sometimes working with a friend, a buddy, isn't without challenges. And it didn't take very long for me to recognize that there were some issues with this person and the shift. And so, when you're the senior person in the car and other members of your shift come to you, multiple other members come to you and spell out, here's the problems with this person before you arrive, and then they fill you in after you've been there for a few days. If several good people are taking the time to come to you and the complaint is very similar or the same with each person, you got to give it some weight and pay attention to it. And so, it wasn't just my job to be the senior person in the car and teach that person and coach that person. That person had been on for like 7 or 8 years when I was working with them on my shift in uniform. And there were the issues that the guys were telling me about were obvious, and I had to do something about it because that's my job. I wasn't assigned to it by the supervisors, but it's my job as a senior guy to recognize those things and to do my best to correct them. But when it's a friend of yours, you know, you kind of have to, if you want it to work, uh, you have to be effective at it. So it's not just coming down hard on the person or criticizing them for the areas that need improvement. It's helping them make those improvements, realize what they are, and then fix them. But the person has to want to as well. And they have to take the hard steps of hearing what the issues are and then correcting them. And sometimes it means the most when it comes from someone that they know and someone who's been around, which I had. And the issues were this sort of talking with more experience than they actually had, talking down to the people that on the shift that were junior to them just by a couple of years. And you know, you can never, in this job, there's always someone better than you, smarter than you, more experienced than you. And when you don't, as of yet, have that diversity of experience and real seniority under your belt, but you talk down to the junior guys, that's just a fucking no-no. You can't do that, because even some of the intelligent, more life experienced junior people will spot that, and it can cause a ton of stress, and it can be a cancer on the shift. And it was in this case. But I don't think the person was aware of it. So, you know, you especially if, you know, if you're talking down to the junior people, but if you're lacking in confidence and decision-making ability, which this person was, you know, you can't do that. It isn't right to talk down to anybody, but if you've got the experience and the career diversity and seniority, even though it's wrong, at least you can back up what you're saying. Well, this person couldn't. And I quickly got to see, you know, in handling calls and dealing with people on the street, that this person, making a decision for them was challenging. And I was constantly being looked at and asked, what do you think? Or, you know, what should we do here? Or how do I write this report up? And that shouldn't have been the case. That person knew enough about what they were doing, but when it came time to committing to directing an investigation in a certain way, writing up an arrest report, or making a decision in front of an asshole who's running over you, treating you like a pushover, I mean, that just becomes obvious, and not just to me or to the other guys and gals on the shift, but the assholes on the street see that, and they'll exploit it, and they'll push further. And on several occasions, they did, because assholes can read the room. They can see when someone isn't projecting the authority or isn't confident in their decision. And thank goodness nothing ever happened, but, you know, that's something that's got to be fucking corrected. Especially if down the road that person's going to be in a position of supervising a subordinate or coaching a junior member. And I could see that I had my work cut out for me. What it made it a little bit more challenging is that my supervisors knew about this, and they had kind of given up hope. They had kind of treated this person like, you know, everyone gets a turn to have to work with this officer, and they didn't handle it properly, and they didn't do what it takes to correct this behavior. And in assigning me to work with that person, it was just one of those convenient things where, oh, you know this person, so you can work with them. That's good, because here are the problems we're seeing. I didn't question what they've done to fix it. because you got to be mindful of the battles that you pick and how you pick them. And they were right in that I was the right person to fix it. There's no denying that. But you have to be invested in trying to fix that person and not just give up in a lost cause. And I did not think that this person was a lost cause. There are some fucking people out there who you can't fix. It ain't worth the effort. Put them somewhere else, off the street. Unfortunately, our organization doesn't like to do that or admit that. Sometimes they do it. But far too often, it's gone way too far and it's caused way too many problems when the problem was identified and could have been dealt with much sooner and much more efficiently. So, observing all of these things, like the person asking me, well, I don't know how to write this up. I don't know what to say here. I had been on, say, for example, drug arrests. I had been on street level drug arrests with that person, and they'd been involved in those types of investigations and traffic stops and written them up before, and they did know what to do, but they just lost the confidence to make the decision on their own when I was there, and instead deferred to me to make the decision for them. But you can't fucking do that. At a certain level of experience and time, not just seniority, but diversity of more than just taking calls. You have to make the fucking decision yourself as to how you're going to write this up. How am I going to write my notes? Which way am I going to direct this investigation? And this person was capable. They just lacked the confidence in making the decision. And right or fucking wrong, stick with it and do it, even if you're going to lose. Because that's the way she goes. That's how this thing works. And you learn more from those mistakes. So I have to say it was fucking draining. Like, it just sapped my fucking energy. Tour after tour after tour, week after week of watching this happen. And finally, I made the decision to do one of the hardest things I've ever done in my career. And that's have a personal, heart-to-heart, one-to-one conversation with a friend and tell them what you see that's wrong, what they're doing that's wrong, and to be direct and point it out. So that's what I did one day as we were pulling into the back of the barn where we parked our cruisers. I took the second and I just said, I'm going to tell you something and you need to hear it, and just know that I'm saying it because I give a shit, and I believe that you can make the changes that you need to make, and that you deserve my time and energy, and that this is not a lost cause, and that you can change and you can improve. And I pointed out how I was no longer going to make decisions for her, especially on the street when we're stick handling calls or dealing with complainants, that when she was jumping, she is not to ask me what to do, that she's perfectly capable of making a decision, even if it's wrong, doesn't fucking matter, but that she was the one that was going to make the decisions and, direct where we were going with this, and that she wasn't to ask me anymore because she could do it. That's what I told her. I also told her you cannot talk down to the junior guys. Even if you have the experience and diversity to back it up, don't fucking do that. Because people won't listen. The good ones or the bad ones. They won't listen. If you have the experience and seniority, you can instruct them, not talk down to them. You can guide them, you can help them, but you can't fucking talk to them like you know more when you're just a couple of years ahead. Because that shit don't work and it spreads like a cancer on a fucking shift. And that was really hard. She cried. Yeah, it was hard for me to say. It was harder for her to hear, I think. But it was an absolute necessary step to take. And of course, after doing that, and another important thing is I didn't do that. I never spanked her calm down, in front of the shift. What I mean by that is you don't give her shit in front of everybody else, because that's the wrong way to do things. You do it when it's private, and you do it because that's a in cruiser car thing. That's just between the fucking two of you. You know, you don't air that dirty laundry. Everybody else knows what's going on. Everybody else on the shift knows that I'm fucking burnt out. That this is sapping my energy. But you know, you don't punish that person by embarrassing them. You want to correct their behavior. So I also let my bosses know about it, and because you have to go up that chain of command, let them know the work that you've done, and you know, I don't think the response was apathetic, but it wasn't. Oh, I'm using that word right. It's a big word. Sounds smart. I love sounding smart. That's a good word. But it wasn't as positive as I had hoped it would be. But you know, they need to recognize what I was doing, because wasn't something for me. You know, this doesn't improve me personally or my career. It's for the entire group of guys and gals, and you know, to improve the shift condition. And I believe I did that. You know, and we continued working together for a while. And I don't, you know what, I never really asked, that's a mistake I made. I never really asked the rest of the shift if they noticed a difference after that. But bottom line, I did what I had to do, and I had to do it whether or not it totally changed things. I believe, at the very least, that it was good for that person to hear it from me. So, lesson learned. And so yeah, I kept on keeping on, taking fucking calls, and helping everybody else out, and all that kind of stuff, until sometime later, I had my first really sort of difficult and challenging family trouble at home, in my home. And then I needed to make a decision and adjust what I was doing at work to meet that challenge head on and to look after it, because family first. I'll get into that more in the next episode, but it deals with anxiety, and something that a lot of us think is all fucking bullshit or stupid or weak. But I can tell you, because there are a lot of people that we see as cops who fucking milk that shit and take advantage of it, and they drain the system of resources and energy because of how much bullshit calls for service they take up. But when it's legitimate, and when it's your own flesh and blood, fucking job doesn't matter compared to that. Your first priority is to do whatever it takes to resolve the issue, to help improve it. And again, so we'll get into that next week. I've been blabbing for far too long. We're getting towards the 24-minute mark. But once again, you know, if I can be of benefit through my experience by answering anybody's questions or talking more directly to anyone if they have similar situations, I'm more than happy to do so. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your families. Love you guys. And we'll see you next week.